Hello class, I hope everyone is doing well. I'm going to present the midterm project that I worked to analyze the NBA data. Because I know we all miss the ball games, I chose to analyze the NBA data, and I have obtained several data sets from data.world and nbastuff.com website. To illustrate my data set, the very first data set is called TeamStat, which has all the data of teams from 1980s to 2011. The second data set is called MVP and Finals. This data tells us Eastern Conference champion, Western Conference champion, NBA champion, and runner-up of each year from 1956. Not only that, this data has the information about the MVP, including their position, height, nationalities, team, and whether they made to NBA final on that year. The third data set is called Player Stat. This data set, similar to Team Stat, has the information about each player's basic stats as well as their advanced stat from 1950 to 2017. The fourth worksheet, Team, is a table I created to use to find the team abbreviation with VLOOKUP function. If you see the power pivot diagram view, all the tables are related to team table by one-to-many relationship. The very first analysis of the project starts from the fifth worksheet called Power View 6. This data basically shows each year's NBA champion on being map. As you can see, we have the biggest circle on Boston, followed by Los Angeles, as Boston Celtics and LA Lakers are two leading teams with most championships. Even though this graphic does not show much detail, I use this visual as it illustrates which teams have the most championships and what teams have ever won the championship. After creating the championship map, I was curious whether having MVP in a team could lead to a championship. So on the next worksheet called MVP and Championship, the first bar graph is a top 10 team with most MVPs and the second bar graph is the top 10 teams with most championship. The top 3 teams on the both graphs are identical even in orders: Celtics, Lakers, and Bulls. Not only that, we can see other teams on both graphs such as Spurs, Warriors, and Heat. We have no value on MVP graph as there were no MVP selection from 1950 to 1956, the first 6 years. There may be some correlation between two parameters. To better understand the relationship, I create the third graph that shows how far MVP could lead the team by each decade. The blue bar represent the number of teams that have MVPs and have won the championship in specific year. The yellow bar is for number of teams with MVPs and was runner-up in specific year, whereas the gray line graph shows the teams did not reach to final with MVP in their team. It seems that there is not strong relationship between having an MVP and winning a championship, especially in the 21st century. However, before 2000, there seemed to be some relationship between having a MVP and winning a championship. Therefore, we can conclude that having a MVP in a team does not guarantee a championship, but it will certainly increase the chance of a team to advance to final. Then, with the hype of three-pointers these days, thanks to Steph Curry, I began wondering which position has advantage of winning an MVP. If you see the first visual, centers have won the most MVP with 26 times out of 64 years, whereas forwards and guards each won 19 times. However, after dividing up the data by each decade, I realized that centers won MVP during the early era of NBA, while forwards and guards became more important in these days starting 1980s. This information tells us important message that the trend of the game has been changed. To better analyze, I create a pivot table that shows average height of MVP by each era. As you can easily see with the color scale, the average height keeps decreasing. The next pivot table tells us the average total points and average 3 points made by position. In the early era, big men were responsible for most of the points. However, with the introducing of 3 points rule in 1980s, relatively small positions are getting attention and lead the team scoring. This trend continues until 2019. Now we know that 3-point rule has increased the importance of smaller positions. We need to prove that small positions are taking more responsibilities on their team's success. Therefore, I created 3 graphs of average win share, VORP, and PER values of each decade by position. Using the slicer, we can choose the position we want to examine. So this one is center, forward, and guard. We can clearly see huge ups and downs of all 3 stats on center position, while the other 2 positions have relatively flatter curve. In addition, to analyze the trend of team offense, I created pivot table with data bar and bar graph showing difference on average 2 points made and 3 points made of teams that were eliminated on playoff race and teams that made to playoff. The overall trend is that 2 points are keep decreasing, while 3 points are keep increasing. Another thing to note is that eliminated teams sometimes made more 2-pointers than playoff team in some years, like these 2 decades. On the other hand, eliminated team never made more 3-pointers than playoff team in the history. And there has some notable difference on numbers of 3-pointers made between 2 groups compared to 2-pointers. The third table here has color scale and trend line of 2 points and 3-point attempts by each decade, clearly showing downward trend of 2 points and upward trend of 3 points. We can see this trend on the bar graph as well. Therefore, it is true that the current trend of NBA is changing to more 3-point attempts, and this could lead teams to playoff with higher probability. And because of this trend, smaller players with ability of long-range shots and creating space for shots are having more importance in the offensive end of the ball games. Just to briefly predict the number of wins a team has to make playoff, on the line graph, playoff teams on average made 50 wins out of 82 games. Therefore, to safely make playoff, a team should win around 50 games and make around 550 3-pointers during regular season. The last worksheet is the collection of pivot tables that I used to create pivot charts, which I introduced on previous worksheets. I hope that the COVID-19 ends soon and we can get back to our normal life with more NBA games. Stay healthy everyone, and thanks for listening.